YouTubers, this is another video from your friendly neighborhood reviewer, Evelyn. So today we're going to recap on the series A Superior Day. For all those that haven't seen the video reviewing episode 1 and 2, I would encourage you to rewatch that to catch up where we're at right now. I'll probably put a little thumbnail here. So to recap from where we were, at the end of episode 2, Lee Ho-chul was cornered into obliging to the contract killer's demands. The beginning of episode 3 starts off with a flashback in which the path of the contract killer and the serial killer crossed, because we see the serial killer there. The serial killer, as we know, is the art teacher. We see him there comforting a girl in the sofa, and the girl is talking about how she's afraid that this guy is going to kill her. But unbeknownst to her, she's sitting next to another killer. Not a contract killer, a serial killer, a sociopath. And then we get a shot of the contract killer waiting in the car, just like they're sent to kill the girl. For reasons why he is there to kill the girl, we have no idea. So the serial killer goes and kills the girl before the contract killer arrives, because he doesn't like the idea of another person there taking his prey. So the contract killer goes into the place, and then he ends up seeing that the girl's already dead. And then he finds that the serial killer had called the police and put him in that trap where the contract killer was taken in by the police. So we don't know the reasons why the contract killer was there to send to kill the girl, but we see him call somebody else saying that was there anybody else apart from him, which we assume to kill this girl. So this bit, I'm left a little bit uneasy if the contract killer's motivation was to force Lee Ho-chul to find the serial killer for him to get revenge for this killer tricking him and putting him in prison. I think that's a pretty cruel motivation. I was thinking it was something more noble. But this contract killer is another sicko, more sicko than the serial killer, let's say. So as the episode progresses, Lee Ho-chul has to come to terms with obliging to the contract killer's demands. After he calls his paramedic friend to take care of the security guard, he goes up to the apartment and he sees that the contract killer has left a box of clothes for him to wear, in which he does. And then there's a negotiation scene within there where Lee Ho-chul tells the guy, "How do I know my daughter's not dead?" And the killer is like, the contract killer is like, you can't negotiate with me. But then he tells him, well, in this book, because he starts reading through the book of his therapy, Lee Ho-chul, of like trying to remember the attacker, which happened, 2 years ago. He kind of fakes, he does a bluff to the killer saying that the book's here with the identity of the serial killer. And Lee Ho-chul already realizes that the contract killer is watching him, spying on him, that there's like webcams all over the apartment. So the contract killer is there looking and, is trying to see whether Lee Ho-chul is bluffing or not. So he obliges with thinking that Lee Ho-chul has the sketch of the killer within that book. And Lee Ho-chul gets to talk to his daughter Suha, who unfortunately is tied up, blindfolded and everything. And she's there talking to her dad. And Lee Ho-chul reassures Suha that he'll be there to save her. And then afterwards, when the contract killer goes and tells him, okay, that's enough, Lee Ho-chul burns the book, and the contract killer is like, what are you doing? And he says, now I'm the only one who knows the face of the killer. So from there, Lee Ho-chul is retracing his steps, and he gets a video clip from the guy saying that you should start from here. Apparently this video clip shows the serial killer in disguise walking out from the apartment. So he starts retracing his steps from there, and the story really picks up when he encounters the art teacher, aka the serial killer, and they start talking. And then the serial killer says, oh, I'm going to go off, I really wanted to show Suha the paintings and all of that, but before that I want to go around and see, revisit some old places that I went to before. These particular words stay stuck in Lee Ho-chul's mind. And then he remembers what the contract killer told him, that the killer loves to revisit his murder scenes. And from there, of episode 3, but in the meantime in episode 3, the police find the security guard's body, and Lee Ho-chul goes and leaves his coat and everything there, and the police unfortunately have him as a suspect. But then again, the detectives kind of point out that it looks like Lee Ho-chul's leaving evidence for him. So therefore, unfortunately, Lee Ho-chul, unbeknownst to him, his mugshot is, as suspect or person of interest. We get introduced back to this slimy reporter from episode 1. He overhears what the police are talking about, and then he tells all his followers in social media, this guy is the killer. He's the rich girl killer without no concrete evidence. And then we see Lee Ho-chul's wife come to that cold realization that something's happened with her husband. She doesn't quite put her finger on what's wrong with the daughter that hasn't come about yet. So she's trying to figure out what's going on. And of course, for obvious reasons, the detectives that are higher ups told her to stay out of the case because of course she is the wife of Lee Ho-chul. So she's doing her own investigation, trying to find out what's going on. And then Lee Ho-chul goes and follows the artist around, and then we get the investigations cutting back forward towards the episode. We get the investigations from the police, this girl detective that's friendly with Lee Ho-chul's wife and this guy, and then they're talking to the people within the apartment. And when they get to the artist's place, they interview him, a little bit of an interrogation, and the artist goes and tells him, yeah, I didn't know the victim was in the building. We met once or twice, but things didn't happen as the way he expected, and then he didn't speak anymore, that he didn't speak with the woman anymore. But then again, the serial killer, he starts imagining what really happened, what went from hello to creeping her out to forcing her to eat glass. So the female detective is suspicious. She's like, okay, this guy is pretty out of his head. So towards the end of episode 3, Lee Ho-chul's following the artist, but before he can do anything to see what the artist/serial killer is doing, he realizes that he's wanted by the police. He sees his face plastered all over his social media, and by the end of the episode 3, a cruel realization comes to him that these things are getting way out of hand, and the contract killer is no help whatsoever. He kind of tells him that it's, his business of how he's gonna find the serial killer. So that's essentially the, episode 3 is about Lee Ho-chul coming to terms with what's going on with his reality, but at the same time, he's there struggling mentally, trying to save his daughter. So as we get to episode 4, Lee Ho-chul has, in shock of having his face plastered all over social media, he grabs a cap while leaving good change, and then we see the flash forwards from the beginning of episode 1 coming to fruition, where he's wearing the cap, the suit and everything, and he's following the serial killer. He's following the serial killer in a really creepy way. He's revisiting the sites where he went with the victim, the girl who he forced to eat shards of glass, and we can see the psychology of this serial killer, that he's a real sociopath, that he takes pleasure in hunting women and then eventually killing them. So as Lee Ho-chul's following the serial killer from cafe to around the shopping mall, and then he eventually goes to the cinema, Lee Ho-chul goes and sits in the seats right behind the serial killer, and he sees the serial killer there imagining, play acting something, and Lee Ho-chul is thinking, what's wrong with this guy? So as Lee Ho-chul follows the serial killer out to the place, the female detective from episode 3 has her suspicions about the artist. So she's there, goes back to the apartment, and then she sees that the artist/serial killer is there, but the serial killer is clever. He realizes that the female detective is following him. So the part of episode 4 that was oh my god, I knew where this was going. Anybody who's seen enough serial killer movies know that the guy was trapping the female detective, because he starts going this long way around through the subway, but at the same time Lee Ho-chul is following the female detective and the serial killer, so it's kind of one following each other and the other one. So the serial killer goes through the subway, jump cuts, but then he goes to see the tube map, and then he starts circling different areas, and then he walks off. And then the female detective sees the map, and then the cold realization goes into her mind that this is all the places where all the other murders happened. So it's episode 4 is just a confession of the serial killer. He thinks he's that clever that he can confess to anybody and get away with it. So the serial killer leads the female detective to a site where they have where they store large metal containers from ships and stuff. So the detective follows the serial killer there. But before the detective goes into where the ship containers are, she sends her location to the police station, and they all go and like follow. They all go and drive there. But by the time they drive there and they're to the big area where all those shipping containers are, it's pretty impossible to reach her in time. And also at the same time that Lee Ho-chul's there, like following the female detective. Other part of episode 4, we find that Sua escapes Lee Ha-jul's daughter because the minion, one of the lackeys of the contract killer, accidentally leaves her loose. So she's escaped, unbeknownst to Lee Ha-chul. So the contract killer has to keep pretending that he has her daughter until Lee Ha-chul completes the mission. So as the detective goes and follows the serial killer, she ends up being lured into this container that has a different color from the rest of the blue ones. And when she went in by herself, let's just face it, she was going to die. It's not going to be no shock, she was going to die. So as she goes into the shipping container, she starts seeing evidence like plastic sheets and everything, and then she has her little gun there. I don't know why in Korea the police that they have like a small handgun, like at least a semi-automatic or something, because a small handgun 6 bullets in the chamber. But unfortunately, as she confronts the killer's fast. We get the scene where the lights are flashing in and out, and before she can make she does the shot, but we don't know whether it hits, she's already down. And Lee Ho-chul hears the shot, so he's there following, trying to find where it is. And then we get the interaction between the female detective and the serial killer. The detective goes and taunts the killer, saying that you think you're an artist, but you're just a scumbag trying to pass as an artist. And this clearly troubles the serial killer, where he goes through kind of a memory where some other woman told him something similar. And then we can see the MO of, the modus operatus, or whatever you would call having, the method of the killer after frustration of what happened to him with some other female companion, past girlfriend, abusive mother, God knows, the typical maybe Norman-based type of psychology going on. So unfortunately, the serial killer goes and kills the female detective, stabs her in the stomach, and then, gives the finishing blow, which in this series, they don't show the graphic part, they show the aftermath, and even like that, they blur out the wounds that probably are a bit too explicit. And she's dead. We can only say she's dead, but Lee Ho-chul goes into the container, and just a quick note, the contract killer had put a body cam, webcam, God knows, I don't know where the camera he has in. Probably, I think it's in the clothes that Lee Ho-chul's wearing, a camera where the contract killer can see all of Lee Ho-chul's movements. So when Lee Ho-chul goes and sees the killer, the one that he intercepted 2 years ago, the one that caused the breakdown of his mind and his life, Lee Ho-chul has shocked. He sees the guy there, painting his portrait with the blood of the poor detective, and he realizes this is the guy, and even the contract killer is there on the edge of his seat. So there's a big struggle, and the obvious thing happens, but it wasn't so dramatic that I was thinking was going to be. A little bit, thank God, because all of episode 4 was a big chase just to find out what's going on, because the police don't know. Lee Ho-chul's wife doesn't know, so it's getting right straight to the point. Lee Ho-chul goes for the struggle with the serial killer, and then he runs off. But however, as he's trying to save the detective, she's already dead. Lee Ho-chul is very distraught, and the police come in, and of course they arrest him. But as Lee Ho-chul is there in the police station with that really awful reunion with his wife, the contract killer calls, and he manages to answer in the police station as, I'm calling my lawyer, and he tells the contract killer, you have to get me out of here, and which the contract killer does by putting some sort of sedative or a knockout thing within Lee Ho-chul's food in the interrogation room. And he manages, the contract killer, God knows how he got out, because since he came out, the contract killer came out of prison on furlough, and he's stuck in the penthouse where Ihojul was also living. So he manages to help Ihojul escape by posing as a paramedic and knocking out the police guy that accompanied Ihojul to the hospital. And by the end of episode 4, we get towards the flash forward of what we saw in episode 1, where Ihojul stumbling out of the ambulance. He puts on his cap, he's given a briefcase, and the contract killer calls and he tells him, this is your final chance to kill the serial killer. And then Ihojul's like looking at the gun almost to say, he can't do that. Ihojul's a normal guy. That's the thing that we have to put underline. A normal guy that's been put in an awful situation that was really not his fault. But the contract killer, I think, tries to push the morality on him, saying that the serial killer has killed 5 people. Who else he's going to be victim of? The next victim could be on your, the blood's on your hands, trying to guilt trip him massively. But Ihojul goes and tells the contract killer, what about my daughter? And the contract killer can't tell Ihojul that his daughter's escaped. So he goes and bullshits him, saying that, don't worry about that, just concentrate on what you need to do. And then we get the other part of the scene, that Sua is trying to escape. She ended up collapsing somewhere under the tunnels, I think where the apartment complex is. And when she wakes up, she goes to the exit, but the exit's jammed by these trolleys and stuff. So the poor girl's going, don't want you say oh, don't want you say oh. Well, please help me. And then the serial killer's back in the apartment. Flash forward from the beginning, he opens up the door. And as Ihojul is telling the contract killer, I think I know where he is. He's there escaping the police, and he gets to the apartment complex. He's about to shoot, or trying to shoot. He's there shaking like a leaf. The serial killer looks at him and smiles evilly. And then we see Ihojul sees his daughter with the serial killer, and the serial killer has a knife in the left hand. And that's where episode 4 finishes. So I want to give a shout out to a new subscriber, Alicia Nalani Macaulay. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing your surname, who kindly said to review the next episode. Episode 5 is out, but apparently episode 6, the actor who plays the contract killer apparently contracted COVID, so they had to shut down filming. So I don't know how the filming schedule is in Korea. Normally in these American shows, they've already filmed all the episodes. Maybe they film some in a block and then film the rest later, well, I don't know. Big shout out to Alicia. I will have a look at the other recommendations you put in the comments box. But as always, I'll leave you. Stay safe, stay true, and see ya!